Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. When I went to horticultural school, Lythrum was a recommended perennial. We did not know at that time that the sterile ornamental plants would cross-pollinate with those in the wild and form fertile seed that can remain dormant in the soil for up to 20 years. So now you see growing in the ditches their progeny, and everywhere where there is a little bit of moisture or a wet spot. So invasive species have become a real issue in this province and in North America. The dandelion was introduced, and with the ban on pesticides, the municipalities cannot afford or cannot control them. So the federal government, in all their kind and wise ways, had it removed from the noxious weed list. This means that they now do not have to control the dandelion and cannot be fined, and neither can you if you don't control them on your property. The dandelion seed can be spread on the wind for up to a mile. The gray-black squirrels, aka bushy-tailed rats, are an invasive, aggressive species from Europe. They are not necessary to a healthy environment and a real pain if you're growing vegetables and other plants that they just love to eat. Earthworms are also an invasive species. With the last ice age, most of the native worms were destroyed, and with over a dozen different species alone that have been introduced from Europe of the common earthworm. Several of them also have been introduced from other areas of the world as well. Earwigs were another invasive species that we didn't know about until they blew in from the United States northeast across Lake Ontario to Canada and have spread out from there to practically everywhere. I never will forget being told, oh, there's such a big problem, you should be selling lots of earwig bait. And I'm going, they haven't got here yet. They're in Grimsby. I can't sell anything to anyone from Grimsby in the Niagara Peninsula down, because on the wind, they didn't come that way. They went farther north from Grimsby up through Ajax and Toronto, etc. So there we go. Didn't have those, but we got them now because they're just everywhere, right? Now, Asian lady beetles. That's an interesting one, in the fact that they were introduced in the United States, specifically Louisiana, to the greenhouses to help control aphids and other insects in the greenhouses. Well, they're far more aggressive. They are not, of course, native. They are very, very aggressive and invasive. What they did was they followed the aphids that went after the soybean crops and kept migrating on the wind up the Ohio Valley and attacks our grape crops here in Niagara, almost ruining a whole season's wine. And yes, they do bite. Cold weather is no longer stopping the bugs and other invasive species from moving north. The Asian lady beetle are now a problem in Montreal. Wow. Okay. In that short period of time, a decade, they've gone from here all the way to Zone 4 and Montreal. Easy. No problem. And they're not having any problems, even with the really tough ice storms and windstorms and snow and cold that we've had in the last few years. Not even slowing them down. Opossums have moved into Canada. We never had them before. They came in on transport trucks. They are now totally hardy here, and we're probably never going to get rid of them. They're always having litters and coming out at night so we don't see them or the damage they do to the environment. Asian carp have escaped in the USA and are now moving north to the Great Lakes. They are trying to control their spread with electric fences in the water of the rivers and streams to keep them from getting into the Great Lakes. Here we won't even go into the invasive species that came from bilge water on the lakers from all over the world who have dumped their bilge water out into our Great Lakes, and all the invasive species that they came with as well. And they're doing quite well as well, so it's not something that is going to stop them just because it's cold or fresh water, etc. Emerald ash borer came across the border with the U.S. in Michigan and have wiped out green ash in Ontario and have moved all the way up and into Gatineau, Quebec. Soon, you are paying millions of dollars a year to have all these dead trees and dying trees removed. They're definitely an insurance issue because as soon as that tree is completely dead, it falls down. And wherever it falls, it does damage. So you have to take them down once they're well infected. You can't just cut them down and leave them. The little emerald ash borer will just continue his life cycle and spread on. So that means you got to chip it down into nothing or burn it. Okay? And that's expensive. The Asian longhorn beetles came across the U.S. border in skidwood from China, and a large area of the Vaughan has been clear-cut, and we now patrol and are paying people to patrol the margins of this area looking for breakouts of the Asian longhorn beetles. If we don't control that one, you can kiss our hardwoods goodbye, and that would be most of the trees we have in this province all the way up to basically the Arctic Circle. So they just won't stop. Eventually, though, I have to admit, maybe the cold will get them at there where it's always frozen. Now, the next gift from the USA to Canada was likely to be nutria. And the nutria are an interesting little guy. They look basically like giant beavers. They're omnivorous. They're very, very aggressive, voracious. They're more herbivore. And let's put it this way. They're not going to leave your garden alone. They're going to romp right through your garden and do a wonderful job of, you can almost kiss growing vegetables goodbye, except under maybe caged conditions. They are now in New York State, and don't think that the water will slow them down since they are excellent swimmers. In South Africa, the English oak is an invasive species. In the American Northwest, English ivy is an invasive, periwinkle is invasive, everywhere. Hey, I didn't plant periwinkle in my yard, in my garden, but somehow or other, I have it. Okay? How? Don't know. So before you plant, before you move wooden skids, before you pick up and move tree parts that have been cut up and left, think and think hard that you are part of the problem, not part of the solution. So think and think hard before you act, and act accordingly to what is best for the environment and the environment that your children are going to have to live in. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.